In this next video, we're going to talk about using the time clock features in Rix Enterprise. There's going to be different parts that we're going to go over. We're going to talk about first enabling the time clock and whether you're going to use passwords or not to clock in and out. We'll talk about how to actually clock in and out at the POS level, how to make adjustments to time clock entries on the back end, and how to run time clock reports. This first part is how we're going to enable the time clock. So at the top level in the right hand corner, we're going to go to Setup, Manage Store, and Setup Settings. This will bring you into the Setup Settings where we can look at configurations. So now we can click on the View Lookup tool, look up your stores, and I'm going to do the time clock for everybody, so I'm just going to select the top level. And then I'm going to go to Configurations. So the first thing that we're going to go to is the POS Options area, and this is where we're going to enable the time clock. So you'll see an entry here that says Enable Time Clock. If you want to enable that, you're going to make this yes. So your options are yes or no. The default is normally no, but if you want to enable it so you can use the time clock, you're going to change that to yes and click on that checkbox. The second part is if you want a password. So every time your people clock in and out, you want to require them to have a password, to type in their password. That is under POS Security, and you'll see where it says Require Password for Time Clock. The default is no. But if you change it to yes, and then we can click on Save. If you don't want a password for it, just leave that on no. There are a couple other time clock configurations that you can set up in Setup Settings under POS Options. One is if you want to look up the user code for the time clock. So when you're at the POS, if you want a magnifying glass icon as a lookup to look up your users instead of the drop down, you can click on this checkbox and change this to yes. And that just changes the way that you look up the user. And the other option is to require a cashier to clock in. What this means is if your cashier goes to ring up a sale and they're not clocked in, it's going to require them to go clock in first before they can ring up a sale. So if you want to do that, you can click on this checkbox and choose yes. And then just make sure whenever you're doing the configurations that when you're done, you click on the Save button down at the bottom. The second part of this is actually at the POS. So once you enable the time clock, that will go down to your POS, so you'll now have a tab that says Time Clock up at the top. So this is where your people can clock in and out. So all you have to do is click on Time Clock, and you'll see the cashier. So you can click on that drop down, or you could type in the cashier number there, and you can choose your ID. And since I put it to have a password for this, that's why password shows up. If you don't feel it's necessary for them to have a password, you won't even see this field here. So you'll see these are the required fields. Once you type the password in, just click on the Validate, and it'll come up as time in. So it'll have today's date and the current time. Obviously, since I'm just clocking in, it says none for the time worked. If I was clocking in for non-sales hours, say I was doing some stock work in the back and I wasn't on the floor selling, I could check non-sales hours. That way it wouldn't code it towards my sales per hour on the floor when I'm selling to customers. If it is for sales on the floor, then leave that not checked and you can click on Save, and that clocks you in. So now if I was going to clock out for lunch or clock out for the day, all I'd have to do is click on Time Clock, choose my cashier number, put my password in, click on the Validate button, and it's going to show me when I clocked in, the date and the time, and it's going to show me the current date and time, how many hours and minutes that I've been clocked in, and then I can just click on Save and that will clock me out. Simple as that, clocking in and out of the POS. And again, you don't have to use the password. That is just if you want each person to require them to type in a password. You can do so by choosing that on the configurations on the back end. So then there's the part on the back end if you are authorized to manage the time clock entries. Whether you need to clock someone in and out, delete times, edit times, you have the authority to do that. I'm going to show you how you can make those adjustments. I think the easiest way if you're just dealing with a person from a particular store is to go up to the top right hand corner and change that to that store number that you're working with. You'll see that changes it to that store number, and now we can click on System and we can click on Time Clock. So this brings you into the time clock screen on the back end of Rix Enterprise. So you'll see you have the tabs of Open Records. These are all the open records. If you want to click down and see Next as you're going along, just hit the Next button. If you want to go to Previous, then you can hit the Previous button. So all these are just the open records. So probably today, when people clocked in for the day, you'll see the person, the date, and when they clocked in, what time. Then we have where if you wanted to manage records, you can click on the Manage Records tab. Again, you can click on Next or Previous. Once you find the person that you want to manage and you want to edit, you can click on the Edit button. This shows the user, the store, the date and time in, and the date and time out, total number of hours, and if there are non-sales hours. If you wanted to change something about it, change the date, change the time, you could do so, and then click on the Update button. So if you do need to delete a time clock record, you're going to click on the checkbox where it says Delete for that time clock record, and you're going to click on the Delete button down at the bottom, and it will tell you that that one record has been deleted. If we wanted to edit it, we didn't want to delete, but we wanted to edit this, we do whatever we need to do for the date and the time. We click on Update, and then we want to make sure that we click on the Save button down at the bottom. That saves that adjustment. If you change your mind, you can just click on the Cancel button.